Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, guess what happens when you write up your best employee after he came in to help on his day off? Petty partner at law firm made our lives awful. Quit and now I am the client. Fired her. My roommate kept stealing my clothes, so I tie-dyed his. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Guess what happens when you write up your best employee after he came in to help on his day off? Not my story, but recently happened to a friend of mine. Personal details omitted obviously. My buddy Steve has worked at a small business for over 10 years. Most of his time there has been pretty alright, but recently it has become a remarkably worse place to work. Steve is the most senior employee outside of management and by far the most productive. He's always training new hires, working extra hours, helping other departments, you name it. Pretty often, Steve will come in for a couple hours on his day off to take care of backed up paperwork and general housekeeping of his department. This does wonders for keeping the department running smoothly, especially when they are busy. Management knows about this and approves. Going into the holidays this year, they are absolutely slammed, as usual. Orders are backing up and it's all hands on deck, extra hours, full tilt. After another 60-hour workweek, Steve has a couple days off. On his second day off, he decides to go into work for a few hours. He knows his coworkers are likely too busy to be taking care of the side stuff, so he's being a team player and helping out. While he's finishing up and about to leave, Steve's manager comes up to him and they have the following conversation. "Hey Steve, quit messing around, get back out there and do your job." Steve replies, "Hey manager, sorry, it's my day off, I'm not scheduled to work this shift. I'm just helping out, leaving in like 5 minutes." Manager replies, "The hell you are, get out of there." Steve says, "Nope, not happening. I'm going home." The next day, Steve is predictably brought into the office, dressed down, and written up for insubordination. But there's a few things about Steve that you should know, that his employers knew but either forgot or didn't care about. Steve has been getting fed up with his employer for a while now. Steve is quite financially stable, as he works in a high-demand industry, and his wife also has a fantastic well-paying job. Steve is about to become a dad. In fact, he is very close to becoming a dad, right after the holidays most likely. So, Steve is in the manager's office, just finished getting talked down to, and handed his write-up to sign. Steve signs his write-up, and hands it back, along with an envelope with a short letter inside. "What's this?" manager asks. "My 2 weeks' notice." Cue the backpedaling. Manager is apologetic, asks for Steve to at least finish the holiday rush. Big boss comes in and offers a raise if he stays, the whole shebang. Steve turns it all down. Now Steve's former employer has to get through the holidays without their most reliable worker, which will take at least 2 or 3 new hires to cover. Meanwhile, Steve can enjoy the holidays without stress, help prepare for the arrival of their baby, and start looking for work again when they're good and ready. Edit, some clarification, Steve's position is hourly, and he got overtime pay for the extra hours. The stuff he worked on during these extra hours would collectively save his department a lot of time and headaches, that's why he did it. There used to be a good team vibe in the company from top to bottom, coworkers who were genuinely friends and good teammates, so going the extra mile made a good thing even better. Not so much towards the end. Also, giving his 2 weeks instead of quitting on the spot was a combination of professional courtesy and also giving his coworkers enough warning to not completely blindside and bury them. This makes me so happy. Good for Steve. Hire competent people, trust and respect them to do the job right, give them pay raises and bonuses to keep them happy and productive, and offer profit sharing as a partner when they hit 10 years. You are insane if you mistreat hard workers. You want to keep them and not lose them to your competition. You want to reward them so everyone can profit, which will keep your business shining and growing. Too many idiots will never figure this out and go out of business as a result. Props to Steve, he'll go where he's wanted and needed. Sometimes managers forget that "don't bite the hand that feeds you" works from the top down just as much as it does from the bottom up. Or, to paraphrase, loyalty works both ways. I've had bosses who never understood that. They were not good bosses. I only got written up twice, 2 different jobs, but the second time they were absolutely shocked when I quit a couple weeks later. I said, out loud in front of everyone, "Well, you made it really clear that my performance wasn't to your expectations when you wrote me up, so I'm just doing us both a favor." In the follow-up meeting where they asked what they could do to keep me, I said, "Nothing. Now that you have written me up, there's a mark on my record and that's just too unstable of a situation for me to feel comfortable in. Sorry." New hires are useless for the first 2-3 months, it's just babysitting them so they don't mess up or die, while taking their trainer off the line. So they'll be down Steve and the trainer for the interim. This is why I keep telling my boss I don't want a new hire while we're still onboarding new clients. I don't have time to handle both. Yet another example that people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. Bad managers make good employees leave. I left my last position cause of my manager as 4 people followed me within a year of leaving cause I wasn't there to compensate for how shitty the manager was. Petty partner at law firm made our lives awful. Quit and now I am the client. Fired her. I worked for many years at a large law firm and had a solid chance at partnership. Never had a bad review. For some reason unknown to me, but likely a result of this person's well-known mental problems and insecurities, a partner I worked closely with lied about me in a review, just enough to cause a problem that would delay partnership for me. I also witnessed her extreme bullying and harassment of others, thankfully not directed at me, but it was bad. I believe the fact that I spoke out against this encouraged her to target me. Unbeknownst to her, I had already accepted an in-house position with a very important firm client when I learned about her attempt to undermine me. About 6 months later, I happened to be assigned to manage a case she was involved in. My colleagues were already upset with her poor performance. So, I was tasked with firing her off the case. Under the circumstances, this was very bad for her already poor reputation internally at the firm, and cut off a huge source of her work. It is nice to do justice. When I was at law firm as a newbie lawyer, I worked for a partner who was a complete misogynistic jerk. He stole the hours of the women associates and routinely padded his bills. One of the firm's biggest clients hired a new lawyer who was tasked with handling the client's lawsuits internally, including bill review, etc. She figured out pretty quickly what he was doing and cut his bills drastically. The partner made it his life's mission to get her fired. He went to his friends at the company after setting her up for a mistake. She barely kept her job and was moved to another position in the company. The partner was ecstatic and went back to his fraudulent billing practices. Because she was very competent, she ended up being promoted to the head of the litigation department after a couple of years. She then spearheaded an audit of the law firm's billing and found numerous instances of fraud, including padding, stealing associate hours, etc. The partner was fired, had to surrender his law license in an attempt to prevent prosecution, and the law firm had to return over $1 million in fees. It was the best karma I've ever seen in my law career. People like her typically run others down to counter their own insecurities. Can only imagine how it must feel knowing that the person she clearly looked down on ended up pulling the rug out from under her. I'd bet real money that it's eating her up. People looking down on others tend to look up others or even the same person at other times. It's the equality that's the problem, the afraid bit. It's something to do with controlling situation and padding self. Once this is realized, healing starts. I have a good story of karma. My boss would always complain about an a-hole defense attorney. This guy had an extremely condescending attitude. We had to deal with him all the time because he was counsel for one of the biggest employers in our area. So said defense attorney is repping said big client employer in a comp trial. Rumor has it he got the injured employee on the stand and let his jackass personality shine. What he didn't know was that this employee had been a dedicated hard worker for many years and that upper management who were present at the hearing were extremely unimpressed with defense counsel's performance. A whole attorney lost his big client. My boss dealt with him a couple times before he left his big fancy defense firm also, said he sounded like a broken man. I haven't seen him since and have no idea what happened to him. This is what I dream of as a former big law associate that was terribly mistreated by a partner that no one wanted to work with. I was not the only one during the first few years of my career. Thanks for sharing so I can live vicariously through you. The law of attraction at work in the real world court. And it doesn't look like the ability to appeal is on the docket. My roommate kept stealing my clothes. So I tie-dyed his. I didn't go to college until I was 21. For some reason the fact that I was of legal drinking age made partying a lot less fun. That wasn't the case for my 18-year-old roommate, Paul. We didn't have much in common, different courses, friend groups, etc., so we didn't talk much, but he was a huge party animal. He'd come to our dorm drunk at 2 a.m. on weekdays and then go to his classes very hungover. He also had a girl over at least once a week, and they were never quiet. But the most notable thing about Paul is that he was an asshole. Not only that, but his family was loaded. So he was the kind of asshole who bragged about how much of an asshole his money allowed him to be. Paul was pre-law, and some of his teachers graded students based on how formal their attire was in class. Paul had 6 Oxford shirts from expensive stores, think Hugo Boss and Ralph Lauren, all in white. His wardrobe consisted only of those shirts, 4 dress pants and a single t-shirt. One day, as I was preparing to do laundry, I noticed some clothes I hadn't worn or put in the basket recently. They were clearly worn, reeking of sweat, alcohol and a bodily fluid I won't name. Some were also stained. It was gross. I confronted Paul about it and sure enough, he'd been wearing my clothes to party, drink and get lucky. His excuse was that his clothes were too expensive to wear at parties, unlike all my t-shirts, flannels and jeans. I yelled at him that he couldn't take my clothes without permission. He said, "Dude, it's just clothes. It's not like you can't wear them anymore." The fight was going nowhere, so I just told him to never do it again. He agreed. The week before spring break, Paul did it again. This time, he ripped one of my jeans. Not a small split anyone can fix, but a long, horizontal tear across the thigh. I could never wear those pants again. I thought about confronting Paul, but then I had a better idea. I was alone when I found out, so he didn't know I knew. For the rest of the week, I didn't bring it up. Then, Paul left for spring break. He was wearing his t-shirt and didn't pack anything else since he was going home. I waited an hour, shoved all 6 of his Oxford shirts into my backpack and left to spend the week with my family. Once I got to my mom's place, I started brainstorming what I'd do with the shirts. Tearing them wasn't enough, those can be fixed. Whatever I did, it had to be permanent. Then, my sister gave me a suggestion. I called a couple of friends over, and we got to work. We tie-dyed every single white shirt. We chose the most vibrant colors we could find. There was no way Paul would be able to wash them off. After spring break, I made sure to get to the dorm before Paul. I put all the shirts back in the closet and left to see a friend. When I got back a few hours later, Paul was on the phone with his parents. He'd put them on speakerphone and was screaming about how someone had colored his shirts and he couldn't wear them to class. At one point, he said he'd wanted to sue whoever did it. At that, his father shut him up and told him to stop complaining. He said it was probably just a prank and he wasn't going to sue anyone. After Paul hung up, I asked, "What's the matter, dude?" He looked at me. I could tell he thought I'd done it, but he didn't say it. For about a week, Paul Paul went to his classes wearing his only t-shirt. He couldn't convince his parents to buy him new shirts, so he had to start wearing the tie-dyed ones to class until he could save enough money to get more shirts. His grades dropped, but he still passed. Paul never stole my clothes again. Not my proudest moment, but I don't regret it. Wait. He was a law student who engaged in underage drinking and theft, and thought he could sue someone over tie-dye? Maybe you should reveal his real name so no one accidentally hires him to handle their case. I'm not sure he actually got to law school. I got a 2-year degree, and by the time I graduated, he was still pre-law. I never really saw or heard from Paul again, and I now live almost across the country from him. Geez, Paul, nothing to get in a twist about. His parents were that rich but never bought him play clothes. Paul, did you even ask them for play clothes for school? It always weirded me out that he was that rich but had barely brought any clothes to college. But again, we didn't talk much, so I never got his reasoning. He probably spent his allowance at the clubs, assuming he could just steal some to use from the poors. I guess I never really thought about it, but it never occurred to me that boys in the dorms didn't share clothes. It took me and my friends 2 days to sort through our clothes and get them back to their owners before school ended. But I guess it makes sense. I can't see my husband ever borrowing his buddies' jeans or hoodies. My sister hated it when I wore her clothes, but I did it anyway. Actually, my favorite pair of sweatpants were originally hers. It's been 15 years since we lived together. Of course, she took my clothes all the time. The only difference was it didn't bother me, so I never got pissy with her over it. Bit weird to have a person's appearance impact their grade. Not everyone can afford nice clothes, and even a reasonably formal outfit from a discount store isn't cheap and won't last long. Feels a bit discriminatory towards students on a strict budget. I'm honestly more shocked that lecturers would grade based on the quality of your wardrobe. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.